I don't even know what this is. It's playing, God, who made that song? Lady Gaga, right? It goes hard, but I don't know what's going on. It looks like a Confederate edit or something. Hey guys, Danny Helmer here. Hey guys, Danny Helmer here, and today we're gonna react to The Worst President Ever by Arthur Greenwood. We might get an actual logical explanation, or maybe we just might get one of those ones that aren't logical. Judging by the thumbnail, it looks overly dramatized. So I wonder if he's actually meaning that Lincoln is the worst president or one of the worst. We can just gonna go in, see what the arguments are. Let's freaking get it, dude.
There's probably no man in American history so mythologized as Abraham Lincoln. He's been turned into this mythical, stately, upright figure, the archetypal American hero. Honest Abe. I mean, he's on Mount Rushmore for crying out loud. The man's basically a saint. Every time we poll Americans on their favorite president, the answer comes back the same. Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, and I just want to... Oh, Ben Shapiro. I just want to say every country has their sort of mythologized historical figure. I mean, Napoleon Bonaparte in France. You got Aristotle, Socrates, Plato in Greece. I guess that one's kind of far back, but you know what I'm saying here. I mean, every country has that sort of mythologized figure in the history. And I agree with him that, you know, Lincoln is kind of mythologized. I don't know. That's not really an argument. He's probably just saying that to say it, but to clarify, you know.
And is the other guy in that top tier beyond simply leading America through the Civil War and to a new birth of freedom.
He is by far the most popular president among liberals and conservatives alike. And of course he is, right? He was a noble, wise, godly leader. He saved the Union and he ended slavery.
I wouldn't say godly,
right?
But...
Not exactly.
I don't even know what this is. It's playing, God, who made that song? Lady Gaga, right? It goes hard, but I don't know what's going on. It looks like a Confederate edit or something.
Now, of course, when you make a video criticizing Lincoln, there's a pretty huge elephant in the room. So let me be very clear. I am not defending the Confederacy. I am not defending slavery.
Thank God he clarified that.
Not some sort of lost cause, neo-Confederate. I'm not here to defend the South. My point is not that the South was somehow good, but that Lincoln was bad. I'm an enlightened centrist, okay? Both sides are bad. Lincoln did not save the Union. He destroyed it. He was not a hero, he was a fanatic whose terrible decisions killed hundreds of thousands.
But Lincoln did not destroy the Union. The Union, secession, it broke it apart. Was that Lincoln's fault? I would say no, that wasn't Lincoln's fault. That somehow he apparently broke the Union when the South decided to secede. I wonder what other arguments he's gonna... I don't want to go on too long here, but yeah.
Of men, but you're not allowed to say that. As Richard Gamble wrote, Lincoln's legacy has been fashioned carefully in marble and bronze, sentimentalism and myth. He is enshrined in his own marble temple, surrounded by his sacred texts. Befitting his place among the gods, his mortal deeds have become redemptive works of national righteousness. To doubt their wisdom or prudence or legacy is to entertain heresy. The Civil War was the bloodiest conflict in American history. More Americans died in this war than in both world wars combined. That doesn't even count all the boys who were maimed.
I just want to say I like his Richard Nixon portrait he has in the back, him bowling. I've seen that portrait, very cool. So I gotta give it to him.
Who came home missing arms or legs or eyes, and had to live that way for the rest of their lives. As Gamble wrote, the tragedy of the war must be measured as it was experienced. In the loss of homes and sons, in unfathomable heartache, humiliation, and spiritual anguish. So we have to ask, was it worth it?
I mean, okay, so we have slavery. Let me get this on camera. We have slavery, and then we have war. So I wonder if he's probably going to bring it up. I just want to see what he says before I go into detail. But I can see what he's saying. It's that did the pros outweigh the cons in this context here? Yeah, let's just see what he says.
Ending slavery is a noble goal. That's a good thing to do. We all agree on that. But was it worth slaughtering 600,000 American boys? Was it worth the bloody carcasses, the sawed-off arms, the towns burned to the ground, the mothers robbed of their 17, 18-year-old sons? The truth is, if...
So I see he's appealing to emotion here and statistical numbers. So that's very interesting. I could see some logic behind it, though.
Lincoln had just let the South go, if he hadn't launched a massive brutal invasion, slavery would probably have ended in a couple generations. You'll notice that all the other civilized countries did not have to fight bloody civil wars in order to end slavery. England, France, Spain, the Netherlands, Denmark, they all ended slavery without war.
Yeah, because it was that's oversimplification. Okay, you had stuff... Haiti went through tragedies too, just like the United States. And the reason why those countries ended slavery so quickly, I would say, is because of its different context. I mean, in the United States, you have the South. They heavily relied on agricultural stuff. That was the whole purpose of them seceding. And I know a lot of people would say, like, oh, that's not really... secession wasn't slavery, when it literally was. I don't know what they're doing. You know, any historian, any logical historian, any logical person would say that the whole purpose of slavery, or the whole purpose of the Civil War, was slavery. So he's definitely oversimplifying that here. Yeah.
Lincoln gets a lot of praise for winning the Civil War, but for all intents and purposes, he also started the Civil War. He could have let the South go peacefully, but instead, he blocked their ports and imposed ridiculous
Okay, let the South go peacefully and continue the immoral practice of slavery. I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't let something go away with that for an immoral practice like that. That's just my moral. That's my morality there.
Tariffs on them. Whether you like tariffs or not, this blockade was probably the worst thing he could possibly have done. Instead of easing tensions with the South, Lincoln blocked their ports with military force. He blocked their trade, which their entire economy depended on, making them feel even more trapped and desperate and betrayed. The war began about 1 month after Lincoln took office. His armies burned southern cities to the ground and slaughtered countless civilians with genocidal glee. Throughout the war, it was very common for the Union Army to enter a town, burn it to the ground, and steal whatever they could get their hands on. In Bluffton, South Carolina, they burned every single private home. Why? Why was there...
Okay, I just want to say that with war, that you know, civilian casualties are going to be inevitable. For instance, World War II, you have a certain leader in Germany doing an immoral practice of prosecuting millions of Jews. You're just going to sit idle and let that happen? I think, yeah, there's going to be civilian casualties in the war, and I would apply that same standard from World War II to the Civil War here, because there's an immoral practice going on, slavery, and there's going to be casualties. This is how it works. That's what war is.
So much hatred for the South. How did America become so divided? To answer that question, we have to go back to the beginning. America is a nation with two distinct roots. The North was largely settled by radical religious movements, the Quakers and the Puritans, who came to the New World as an act of protest against the traditional Anglican Church of England. The South, on the other hand, was largely settled by farmers. They didn't come to America as some sort of ideological religious protest.
Yeah, because the South, yeah, that's the whole point what the South was. They relied on agriculture. They were not as much industrial than the North.
They just wanted some land to call their own. They were still deeply loyal to the British Crown and to the Anglican Church. The vast estates of Old Virginia were meant to replicate the aristocratic estates of the English countryside. They saw themselves as a continuation of the English tradition. By contrast, the religious radicals of the North saw themselves as breaking away from England to build something new. I think a lot of us imagine the Puritans as these very pious, holy men who just wanted to practice their religion freely, but the Puritans were actually kind of awful. They were extremely low church. They basically hated all traditions and sacraments. Whereas Anglicans used outward symbols like communion or baptism to convey their inward faith, the Puritans threw out the outward symbols altogether. They rarely took communion. They thought it was sinful to sing or play instruments in church. And they even thought it was sinful to give wedding rings at your wedding. That's too ritualistic. What are you, some kind of pagan? Basically, their goal was to make church as bland and boring as possible.
Mr. Cromwell, I beseech you. Does the king think that God can be bought with gold, trinkets, and gilded rubbish? I know only that I have been instructed. Has this king forgotten the Reformation? Mr. Cromwell, away with this popish idolaters!
If you've ever been to a modern, non-denom church and it's just a completely gray, undecorated building, and you have to sit through an hour-long sermon, blame the Puritans. They cut out the music and the scripture reading, and they made the sermon longer and longer and longer. They hated tradition, they hated beauty, and they hated hierarchy. The traditional Anglican model was to unite all the churches under an orderly hierarchy of priests and bishops. But the Puritans rejected church unity, and they organized their churches as democracies. Basically, the South was founded by traditional royalist Anglicans, while the North was founded by radical democratic Puritans. In the English Civil War, when the Parliament decided to overthrow King Charles, the Anglicans sided with the king, and the Puritans sided with...
Yeah, I'll admit, that's one reason why the North and South was divided, but I don't think that division led to the Civil War. I think we all know slavery led to the Civil War, and it definitely was not this. This was just, I would say it was a very minor factor. I mean, I guess it did lead to the initial divide, but the secession was all about slavery. Or people could say economics. Economics for what? Agriculture? What is that? Slavery.
With the Parliament. With democracy. Unfortunately, the Puritans won. Oliver Cromwell, a radical Puritan general, defeated King Charles and beheaded him. Cromwell turned Great Britain into a Puritan dictatorship. He massacred Anglican and Catholic civilians. He desecrated churches. And he actually invaded Ireland. He sent his cronies out to hunt down Irish priests. He confiscated land from Irish Catholics. And he enslaved tens of thousands of innocent Irish civilians. Okay, so why am I telling you all this? Because that cultural divide between the North and the South never disappeared. That radical Yankee Puritan tradition found its highest fulfillment in Abraham Lincoln. Like Cromwell, Lincoln was a radical who used extreme violence against those he considered sinful or impure. Like Cromwell, Lincoln was raised in low church Calvinism, though by this time it was the Baptists rather than the Puritans. Like Cromwell, Lincoln rejected traditional Christianity, though Lincoln took it even farther, and it's possible he wasn't even Christian, just some sort of deist. You know who else was a deist? You know who else?
Yeah, but I don't think there's really enough proof to find a decisive answer on his religion. Obviously, he cited the Bible many times during his speeches, but there's no definite answer there. I don't think we can speculate on really anything without enough credible evidence.
Else was a radical? Thomas Jefferson. Lincoln's critics usually compare him to Alexander Hamilton. They say that Lincoln was a dictator who increased the powers of the president. But that is not my argument. Look, I won't deny that Lincoln had some Hamiltonian beliefs. He did believe in a strong federal government and public works and tariffs, but I actually think that Lincoln's worst beliefs come straight from Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Part 3, Lincoln was a red.
You've probably heard that line 1,000 times, and it's so iconic at this point that we all just take it for granted. But this is actually a deeply, deeply controversial and political statement. Lincoln says that America is, quote, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Is that true? Is that what America is dedicated to? Equality? If you went back to 1787 and asked George Washington what America was about, do you think he'd answer equality? If you went back to 1776 and asked the Carolina militiamen or the Virginian aristocrats what they were fighting for, do you think they'd answer equality? No. And yet, because of Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address, this single line has become the motto of America. When modern neocons and neolibs say that America is a propositional nation, that America is just an idea, this is where that comes from. Lincoln also talks about democracy. Remember that iconic closing line? That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Once again, this has...
Okay, I want to say this. I see where he's coming from with the equality statement. Because it took till, I think, Andrew Jackson, I think it was one of the 1824, 1828 election, even poor men were granted the right to vote. Because before that, it was just, you know, people that own property that were able to vote. So by the time of Andrew Jackson came in, that's where the equality thing came in. But
a de facto motto of the United States. But we didn't always see ourselves this way. Government by the people? No, that's mob rule. Most of the founders hated democracy. They wanted very limited suffrage, and they wanted power in the hands of a meritocratic elite, the natural aristocracy. But the Jeffersonian vision of egalitarian democracy, which evolved into Andrew Jackson's even more egalitarian democracy, slowly took over and gained permanent dominance under Abraham Lincoln. In this speech, he tells us what his America stands for. Democracy.
Well, yeah, the founding fathers are obviously, you know, my logic would be that I think everyone should be able to vote. No matter your sex, your race, what religion, you should be allowed to vote. During the time of the founding fathers, their views were a little different. You know, you had to have, like I said before, you had to have property to vote. But when Andrew Jackson came along, you did not need property to vote. Any person could vote, and by the time Abraham Lincoln came in, African Americans were allowed to vote. You know, so that's a good thing, right? Obviously.
And equality, egalitarianism, which again goes right back to the Puritans and the English Whigs, those anti-monarchist factions that murdered King Charles. Cromwell invaded Ireland and burned churches. Lincoln invaded the South and burned Atlanta. If America is a propositional nation, how much death and bloodshed is that proposition worth?
Gotta love Lord of the Rings, right? Okay, gonna add.
In many ways, the Civil War was about the Industrial Revolution. You see, the North's economy relied on factories and production.
Yep.
It was moving rapidly towards the Gilded Age. The South, on the other hand, was agrarian. It was a land of fields and farms and forests. To the northern industrialists, to the millionaire factory owners, the quiet forests of the South were resources to be exploited. Where the Southerners saw their home, the industrialists saw a business venture. Abraham Lincoln was employed by those industrialists. Before he entered politics, he was a corporate lawyer for the railroad industry. For those who don't know, the railroad industry was America's first big business. All that Gilded Age corruption,
I gotta
all those
love this
shady
propaganda
monopolies
piece.
that Teddy Roosevelt broke up, all of that started with the railroads, with those massive corrupt companies run by millionaire oligarchs. And Lincoln was their man. As a lawyer, he defended them in court. And as president, he passed massive tariffs that helped them form monopolies by cutting out their competition overseas. These tariffs were blatant favoritism, giving an unfair advantage to the exporting North and screwing over the importing South. After the war, the South was left wide open for the industrialists. Many Southerners were left homeless by the destruction of the war, and the Northerners were more than happy to buy up their land for pennies. The rural agrarian South was colonized by Northerners who hated them, who saw them as backwards and undeveloped. The South was humiliated, subdued, and occupied by a foreign army. The subjugation of the South set a precedent of imperialism, a precedent that the enlightened radicals of New England had a duty to impose their progressive way of life on the entire world. We imposed our way of life on the backward South, now let's impose it on the backward Philippines, on backward Hawaii, on backward Afghanistan, on backward Iraq, on backward Libya. The idea of local autonomy was entirely thrown out the window. Even now, if you talk about states' rights, you get a funny look. States' rights? So you're saying you like slavery? What's wrong with you? The end result of this is that we no longer think of ourselves as Virginians or Marylanders or Pennsylvanians.
Okay.
We think of ourselves as Americans. Our local identities, our individual state identities, have been almost entirely replaced by our national identity. As residents of the USA, the great land of freedom, And yeah, that national identity is kind of fun. It's fun to set off fireworks on the 4th of July.
No, I think national identity is kind of important in a way. I feel like a lot of terms really add division, you know, like someone from Virginia, North Carolinian. Sometimes there can be, I feel like if you use the word American, it just really unifies those two states together because we're all part of this one great country. I would say the greatest country.
But it's kind of shallow. It's a facade. It's paper mache. America is not a culture. It's an empire. It's an imagined community. My community is not America. It's not the United States. It's my hometown. Personally, I don't really feel much connection with America as a whole. My roots are with my hometown, my home state, the hills where I was born and raised. This local patriotism is actually much older than nationalist patriotism. In Europe, all the way up to the 1900s, Europeans didn't identify as Germans or Italians or Frenchmen. They identified with their local town or their local province. There's the old story of the Alsatian shepherd who says proudly, "I am not French, I am Alsatian." There's the Breton priest who exclaims, "I love France, I am a Frenchman."
Okay.
But first of all, I am a Breton. Building nations requires a lot of forgetting. Before Italy was united under one central government, the different regions of Italy couldn't even understand each other. Lots of them didn't even know what Italy was. They all had their own unique cultures and traditions and ways of life. But the march of modernity stops for no one. Nationalism is just imperialism on a smaller scale. Nationalism and industrialism are progress, and anything that gets in the way of progress must be crushed. Thank you to my current patrons.
This guy brought, he had some interesting points on there, obviously. No, and, you know, to have a take like this in the post, that I do really appreciate him being bold in that matter. Appreciating where you're from and being from the United States aren't opposites. They really coexist. And I think the history of America has really shown that. The whole point of being American is to show that, hey, we all got our local communities. California, to New York, to Illinois, to Texas, Florida, North Dakota. We all have our local communities, but it's being American can coexist with being a local in your local community and being on the state level. That's really what a country is. The country of the United States is a collection of the 50 states. You know, they're also collections of counties. You know, you can care about your state, you can care about your local community. Just you can care about everything. Just because you care about being American doesn't mean you forget about your local community. You're not gonna forget anything. You can be loyal to your home. You can still believe in the nation of America. But listen, without the nation, we wouldn't even exist. None of these local identities would exist at all. It wouldn't survive in the modern world at all. So I would say being American doesn't erase your community. If anything, it really amplifies it, shows how united we are as a country. You know, I've talked to people outside the U.S. all the time. They always ask, what state are you from? They don't just ask, you know, you're from America? That's interesting. A lot of them ask what state you're from. If you ever seen, what is it, The Greatest Beer Run Ever? I forgot the guy. Zac Efron's in there. He's the main character. He goes to, Vietnam. I think it was Vietnam. And he finds this dude, and I think I don't remember the state he was talking about. I think it was Colorado or something. And he said he's from New York. So a lot of foreigners really do appreciate what state you're from. They're really interested in that too. People even say what part of Germany you're from. If you go to France, people go, what part of France are you from? You go to the United Kingdom, what part of the United Kingdom are you from? So yeah, I don't know what he's really talking about there, but if you guys enjoyed this video, you already know what to do. Make sure you subscribe, boys. Join my Discord. And I appreciate the guy that left this video link in my Discord. That's how I find it. So you can join my Discord, link in the description, blah, blah, blah. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.